It's the Vancouver Hockey Show. Andrew Wadden, producer Aaron here with you as the Canucks have their end of season media availability. Yesterday, we thought we'd take a day and just sort of digest it all. There was a lot, Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot, and there's going to be a ton in this offseason. The playoffs were incredible, obviously. Wanted them to keep rolling. Everybody did here. But I think Canuck fans are going to be pretty intrigued by this offseason because there is going to be a ton to unpack, and they got into tons of it at the end of season media availability as well. I almost don't know where to start, to be honest with you.
I have one thing, though.
Okay.
Can we dress them up just a little bit better? Because it just looks like a parole board hearing, you know? Like,
I don't know.
So
I liked it. I think it shows the player's personality.
Well, no, but like maybe like a little, I don't know, just a group of four. It's just, it's too much of a crowd. Like, you know, a little, maybe two guys, you know, like.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't need to hear from Mark Friedman. I can tell you that. I didn't, like how many games did he play?
Yeah.
Right? Don't think they needed to trot out a lot of those guys, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you said dress it up, I thought you meant like what they were wearing.
No. Like it just looks so plain. Like, yeah, parole board hearing, you know, like just, am I free to go? Can I go to the golf course? You know?
Well, that's funny enough. I was told I had lunch today with J-Pat and he told me that Brock Boeser had his golf clubs at the rink as well. So that's kind of, maybe he had left them there. I don't know.
As a player walked in with a golf bag, that'd be great. Like, you know, just walk in.
Put it right down. Like, all right, boys, tea time in 25 minutes. Let's wrap this up. Let's go. Yeah. Let's start with PD though. Okay. I guess this would be our version of the rewind right now.
Yeah.
The knee injury that he had sustained that he said he's been bothering him since January makes a lot of sense when you look at the splits to his season, you know, right up until January was racking up the points. And then sort of fell off a cliff after that, didn't have a great playoff. We know all about that. There's a few things that sort of bothered me about the Pettersson and just the way he sort of deals with the media at times. Listen, I get it that he was suffering from a knee injury. He had tendonitis in the knee. It was bothering him. It was getting painful for him at times. I'm sure he was getting tons of treatment on it and he was able to play. And Rick Tocchet said, listen, there was no point where we thought we had to shut him down. So it was an injury that he could play through. But don't get me wrong. I understand that, you know, that injury could hold him back a little bit. What I don't like, though, is you still weren't good enough in the postseason. So for me, if I'm Elias Pettersson, I'm up there and I'm, you know, listen, guys, I had a knee injury. It's been bothering me since January, but I'll wear this. Like, I wasn't good enough in the postseason. I need to be better and I will be better. And that's all you need to hear, right? And I don't want to drag Elias Pettersson through the mud too much, but sometimes accountability seems to be an issue for these guys, right? And it's not just Elias Pettersson. It's not just, you know, some of these players on this team as well. It seems like it's generational thing, if you will. And, you know, here you go, Wadden, old man yelling at clouds. But sometimes you just want a little bit of, you know what? I need to be better. A little bit of JT Miller, perhaps.
Yep.
Right? Want to see more of that. But that being said, with Petey going into now this offseason, he did say he wants, you know, he's going to train, get better. He's doesn't want to be shit anymore in his own terms, which I thought was pretty funny. But it's big on him. Like, this is going to be a massive season ahead for Elias Pettersson. Ain't no hiding now, Aaron.
No.
Like, you make top dog money, upper echelon. You are swimming with the Connor McDavids, the Bread Man, the Austin Matthews, like the big boys of the league. So, you know, he's got to put up. He can't be having, you know, 89 points. He's going to have 100-point seasons now. Like, this is what those guys put up. Nate McKinnon puts up those numbers. You're swimming with those sharks now. And
that money's going to come from the tickets. So the fans turning up, expect it.
And the 40s in the crowd as well, right? So it's a big offseason for Elias Pettersson, and I'm stating the obvious here, but at the same time, too, he doesn't have trade protection in the first year of this contract. You know Jim Rutherford, you know Patrick Alvin, you know the offseason that's coming up for them here. I'm not trying to start any rumors. Obviously, I'm not tied to anybody with any sort of inside information in that regard.
We'll let you play GM mode on EA here.
There you go. I love playing that. Boy, I'm good at that. I'm just saying there's no trade protection in that first year. Not trying to stir up a hornet's nest. But hey, Petey, it's if you're going to earn those dollars, you're going to have to earn those dollars. Because 11.6 million, I believe it is, on the AAV, whew, that's a spicy meatball.
So playing GM mode, do you have any ideas? Any ideas that you would like to see?
Well, first of all, I'm not trading Elias Pettersson. There's that. We can get into be a GM mode if you'd like with Filip Hronek.
Oh, yes.
Because to me, if you're looking at Filip Hronek and you're looking at perhaps an 8x8 thing or 8x6, whatever it is, let's just start with the AAV, which is rumored that the camp is looking for somewhere around $8 million. Yeah, thank you for your service, Phil, but we'll be moving on. Do you see the back and forth between him and J-Pad? You couldn't miss it. Like we had
classic.
I laughed my ass off. I cut it up and put it up on Vancouver Hockey. But the funny thing is that it went national. Everybody grabbed it. Jeff wasn't in the wrong. He wasn't at all. Asked him a simple question. Why do you think your play fell off in the second half? It was Hronek's choice to get pissy.
Yep.
He was the one that basically didn't like the question. But he didn't have an answer to the question either. And if the team is going to turn around and invest big dollars into you, you better have an answer to them on why you didn't produce in the second half, right? Because they're going to come asking those questions as well. And I saw some people in our comments on our TikTok accounts, Instagram accounts, on the YouTube, all that shit, saying, oh, these stupid media members asking these stupid questions. It wasn't a stupid question. In fact, the answer is what was stupid.
Yeah.
And Hronek not being able to answer the fact that, what did he have, 50 points in the first half? Something like that? I don't know exactly what it was. It wasn't 50 points. Sorry, I inflated it. But regardless,
you and I
splits are terrible.
Yeah, you and I have worked for a number of years. If you don't have an answer for your performance review, then we got a problem.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. So, if you want to talk about be a GM mode, and you're looking at two defensemen that you have to sign this offseason that are both going to command big dollars, like $8 million per season. I'm sorry, Phil. Like, again, thank you for your service, but we're moving on. It's not happening. Even 7, I'm balking at that almost. But with the cap, the way it's rising and the way that it's going to rise or expected to rise, barring another pandemic, these dollars will start to look a little bit more attractive as you move on through the contract. But we put out on Instagram an image today and put a poll behind it and just said, hey, you can only keep one. Who's it going to be? Filip Hronek or Nikita Zadorov? Right now, as we recorded, it's been up for 4 hours. There's about 500, 600 votes, I believe. It's 91% for Big Zed. The people love him. And if you saw, from yesterday's presser as well, like he's a walking soundbite, but he's also backs up the play.
Yes,
and he's also not going to command $8 million per season.
He's asking the media how much he thinks he's worth.
How much do you think I'm worth? I don't know who that reporter was. I don't recognize his voice, but I thought it was a fair question as well. Like, you feels like you're going to price yourself out here. And he's like, what do you think I'm worth? That was amazing. What do I think he's worth? Listen, if you can get him somewhere between 5 and 6, I'd do it. Yep. Hell yeah, I'd do it. And the way that he spoke at the presser, and we're talking about Zadorov now, the way that he spoke at the presser, where he acknowledged the fact that, the Canucks fan base, bigger than Calgary and Edmonton. And then he basically said that Calgary is not even the most popular team in Alberta. And he's right about that. Like, the Oilers run Alberta, but they're nothing compared to the Canucks fan base. The Canucks fan base is massive. And for him to acknowledge the fans and, how much they embraced him, but also mentioned his family, like, these are big things. Zadorov's been on 5 teams, Aaron. Like 5 teams now. He's moved around a lot. And Vancouver, as you know, is just gorgeous. And look at the, circumstances that are here right now. Situation that's here right now, right? You got a lot of good players. You got one of the best coaches in the NHL. You have the best coach in the NHL.
The award-winning
Yes,
coach.
The Jack Adams Award winner, which dropped recently as well. So, again, circling this all the way back to that be a GM talk. Yeah, I'm moving Hronek. He's RFA. You control him. What are you going to get? A couple of draft picks, maybe a B-level. I don't know. But what you really get is, you don't have to sign him. And people are going to say, well, look what you paid for him. And that's fine, because now you're able to look what you paid for Zadorov. You paid peanuts for him if you sign him. So, in one hand, it's, good, and in the other hand, it's bad, but you can look at it both ways. So, yeah, I don't think Phil Hronek, did himself any favors in this market at all by just getting testy with the media the way he did. I don't know if Jeff had to go back at him the second time around, but I know my boy J-Pat, and I love that he did it. So kudos to him, but I'm sorry, Phil Hronek, like that is just not the foot you want to get off on here as you go into what is going to be a difficult offseason, not only for, Vancouver Canucks management and trying to put the pieces together, but also for yourself, because that they saw that. And like we said, they're going to have the same questions for you, bro.
Mm-hmm. And who paints your profile to get in the heads of the people that want to sign you too? It's the media. So you want good vibes and good energy and good story.
There's a few listeners that heard you say that and puked in their mouth, though.
I know, but this is the game, man. This is the game.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but yeah, you're probably good to play nice with the guys that you have to talk to every single day. And from what I understand, Phil Hronek just didn't. I shouldn't say from what I understand. We watch all the pressers. How many did you see with Hronek? I can't remember one. Maybe when he went back to Detroit.
Yeah,
I guess.
Maybe one interview with Murph, when they were in Detroit.
Yeah, I think that's when it was.
Well,
anyway,
to be honest, I had no idea what he sounded like until he was chirping the Flames at the end of the season. I had no idea what he sounded like.
Tyler Myers wants to stay. I would love to, he said, when asked about, remaining in Vancouver. And the funny thing is, as we talk about defensemen here and you talk about term and, guys that are, late 20s, early 30s, perhaps looking for those 6-year deals like the one that Myers got. When Myers got that contract, everybody was like, oh my goodness, that's just too much. What are you doing, Jimbo? Too much money, too much term. Those last couple of years on that contract are going to be awful. The last year of his contract was his best season, perhaps in the NHL. Maybe going, not offensively. He's had better offensive output seasons. He was damn good for the Canucks this year. He was fantastic in the playoffs as well.
Another guy that probably got the Tocchet bump too, right?
Think about it too. You got these stay-at-home defensemen. They kind of age well, it seems like. So wondering where the future holds for Tyler Myers, but I think the Canucks hold the cards here. Because he said it himself. He wants to come back. Now, the guy's not going to come back on a $1 million per year. $2 million, I don't even think it's even going to get done. I think you're probably flirting with somewhere between $3 and $4 million, maybe even a touch over for a season. And again, that might be cause for concern for some Canuck fans and go, that's just a little too much. To see where this all shakes out right now. But again, I believe the Canucks hold the cards when it comes to Tyler Myers because, I think if it was gun to his head, he would want to come to Vancouver over anybody else. So we'll see what happens with Tyler Myers, but interesting to see, where that dollar comes into for him. Now, Thatcher Demko admits that missing the playoffs was the hardest thing he had to go through as a player, and you obviously rightfully so. But he did praise Artie, and he gave praise to Smith as well. But he said that he was going to be available for the next round. So that would be interesting with Thatcher Demko, but does perhaps, and you want to get back into be a GM mode, there's 2 years left on Demko's contract. Now, I'm not saying anything about trading him at all this offseason. Not a chance, obviously. But he is a good chip now that Artur Shilovs has stepped up. Artur Shilovs has still a ton to prove. I get that. But Demko could be one of those pieces that teams, and teams are going to come calling, as they do. They're just doing their due diligence at that point. But interesting to see exactly, where Demko goes next year, where Shilovs goes next year, where the whole goaltending situation goes. And as suggested on our last pod, if it's a tandem situation, then and it works out well, that could be one of the best in the NHL. And if you could get Thatcher Demko somewhere between that, even if it's 45 at the low mark, 50 at the high mark, that would be good for Shilovs as well. And that would be good for sort of, building out your future to see exactly what you have. Thatcher Demko could win a Vezina next year, right? And this could all just be nothing. You wouldn't even be considering that. He's a finalist this year. He's not going to win it, but it'd be really interesting to see where the goaltending situation goes next year. Don't think there's going to be any sort of major moves in the offseason in that regard, though. Now, Elias Lindholm was asked about re-signing, and I love that. Like, Demko was like, be specific. Years and term, or years and dollars, that is. And, he's flat out said he's got to speak to his agent and, just gave you the sort of cliched answer. I'm curious about Lindholm because I'm also curious about where Rutherford and Alvin sort of take this offseason. And Lindholm's going to be in demand. He's probably, priced out of this market, but that also depends on, what other moves the Canucks make. If they do make some really crazy, splashy trade and move one of their bigger pieces, maybe there's dollars left over for, I don't know. To be honest, as I say this out loud, he's gone. I don't see how a scenario that they're able to get him on this team. He's probably going to make $8 million, Aaron.
Yeah.
So if you got Pettersson down the middle at his price, you got Miller down the middle, it just doesn't make sense. But we'll see. Like I said, Rutherford gets quite creative this time of the year. Did you notice that Connor Garland and Carson Soucy had some sweet stashes? They were rocking some good dusters.
Yes.
I liked that. I was into that. I think those are two guys that Canuck fans can be excited about next year. Carson Soucy, although he, was injured for a lot of the year, he showed well in the playoffs. He's a nice little pickup for the Canucks in last year's offseason. So interested to see where those two guys end up next year as well in terms of, what they bring to the table. But I think we know with Connor Garland and Carson Soucy what we're going to get. And we've got a couple of real nice dusters there at the presser. When you said dress it up, again, I thought you were talking about the clothes the guys were wearing. Because did you see Archer Sheloff's shirt?
Oh, well, he dressed up.
He just loves him a loud shirt. Like, I wasn't really a whole lot else that came out of the presser. I thought from Sheloff's. I mean,
you were just distracted by the loudness. You couldn't hear over it. It was so loud you couldn't hear him.
He's very Euro. He was asked about teaming up with, or the potential of teaming up with Demko next year, and how exciting that would be for him. And obviously, he's going to say that it would be great. But again, like that is a very intriguing, thought for the Canucks in terms of, we're going to have these two really good goaltenders. And the funny thing about Sheloff's is like the numbers weren't fantastic in the AHL. I'm kind of curious about this when they went into the playoffs. Like, did they know that they had this sort of in their back pocket, or did they just sort of fall into it after DeSmith got injured? Might be a question for Ian Clark if he ever took questions. Let's get into the management here a little bit with Alvin. I loved the message, right? Not satisfied. Losing in the second round isn't good enough. His message to the players, it was only round 2, guys. And that's the crazy part about all of this, Aaron, is that like for the whirlwind that was the first month of the NHL playoffs, like that's just the halfway point if you're going to win a Stanley Cup. And obviously this city knows that and been through it, 3 times now, but I'm sure for a lot of the people, maybe even for a lot of the people listening to this podcast, like they didn't really get to experience it, maybe to its fullest, depending on your age, obviously. But this team's got a long way to go. I think that's the point that the head coach or the general manager was making. And he knows what it takes. And he's from the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, been through the Stanley Cup runs. Obviously Jim Rutherford with the success that he's been pretty much everywhere he's been. So I love that message. And I love the fact that, that's the challenge now to the players. Garland talked about it, like we're going to be, and he didn't say it in these words, so I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but, we're going to be essentially like one of the hunted next year. Like we're not going to surprise anybody next year. Like we're back on the map. Like the head coach said, he put respect back on that jersey. Alvin suggesting that some young players might be able to compete for spots next year, and kind of looking around Abbotsford going, who are these guys? And obviously people are going to go, well, Vasily Podkolzin, come on, Wadden. Has Vasily Podkolzin shown you that he's ready for anything more than, bottom 6 minutes? Don't get me wrong. We've seen a great shot out of the guy when he was his rookie year. And I don't want to say he's taken a step back. I think the team has taken a step forward, though. And he's sort of here, right?
Yeah.
Back where he essentially has been the whole time. So interesting to see who he means in terms of those players. I think Archie Bains was mentioned. I mean, Archie Bains is a great story, and it would be amazing if he worked out. But I need to see a hell of a lot more before I'm going to coin Archie Bains as a Vancouver Canuck next year. Linus Karlsson, same thing. And, I guess it's the little things, but I just, nothing screams like that guy's got to be on the team next year to me. And Lekkerimaki, I think some of you might be listening going, what about Lekkerimaki? Guys, come on. Like, he just came over. Like, let's give him a year in the AHL. He's a very intriguing prospect and a guy that the Canucks have huge hopes on for sure. But I don't think he's in the plans for next year. And I don't think he's one of those guys that Alvin was talking about. He wants to add a top 6 winger and he wants to add some speed. And I think that's probably at the top of the list of most NHL GMs at this time of the year. That top 6 winger, I don't think that's going to be Jake Guentzel. I know a lot of people want to try to make that connection with the Pittsburgh connection as well. Sounds like the Carolina Hurricanes are doing their best to try to sign Guentzel. I mean, Guentzel's got a chance to be out in the open market, which is obviously always very enticing for players once they get to that point. But I mean, the Carolina Hurricanes and him were a good fit, and they got a hell of a team there as well. So I don't know if it's going to be Guentzel, and we will unpack some, names that the Canucks are perhaps looking at in free agency and maybe even in trades, et cetera. We'll do that on a different pod. But for now, I just sort of use that name because I think some people are making that connection. First of all, he's going to be expensive for one thing. So it'd be tough to sign. And the Canucks only have so many dollars. And Alvin said that, he was asked about the trade deadline. Oh, would you have liked to have grabbed another winger? He's like, hell yeah, I would have liked to have grabbed another winger. I just ran out of money. Like we all have a cap. We can't go over it, And that brings us to Dakota Joshua, who, said all the right things. But this is, Dakota Joshua is going from making, less than $1 million a season to making what? I think it starts with at least a 3. And that's on the absolute low end. Maybe, in fact, it might even start with a 4. I mean, if you look around at some of the guys on the roster and what they're making, Mikhailov's making 4.7. Garland makes 4.9. So if you're Joshua's camp, you're probably like, well, that guy got 1 goal in 60 games.
Yep.
Right.
And he was on the top line.
Yeah. And Alvin suggesting that was his fault and that, he didn't do his part to, I guess, make the lineup better in that regard. Well, when they signed the guy too, they were also suggesting that he could be somewhere between 20 and 30 goals a season. So what is it? If you're scoring 20 to 30 goals a year, well, you can play in that top 6. So Dakota Joshua is one of those guys. The whole, fan base wants him to be re-signed here. And, he's like Zadorov in that regard, in terms of folk hero over the postseason and over the season. He was just, the guy that sort of came out of nowhere. And I know Alvin suggested that, they got to go out and try to find the next Dakota Joshua. And that's easy to say, hard to do. But with Dakota, what sort of dollars are going to be there for him? And if they are thinking about doing Zadorov and Hronek back, does that price Dakota Joshua out at that point? Right? So again, a very interesting end of season, presser. I'm just trying to see if I missed any points that we wanted to get to here, but I think for the most part, we covered it all. I didn't really think Tocchet had a whole lot there, like a lot of coach speak in terms of the summers. And I know we joked about the last summer, when he was like, oh, I'm going to be there, was talk peeking around the corner, at the gym or something. Right. Like, but he did talk about how, 30 minutes just isn't enough with guys. And that he'll be, in contact with them over the off season and, sending them video and doing the things that they thought that worked for them last year. But other than that, I didn't think we needed to really hear a whole lot out of Rick Tocchet. I mean, he's pretty much summed it all up throughout the postseason run. And, these pressers are really, the time for the GM and the players to shine. Right. And like I mentioned, I liked what I heard from Patrick Alvin. And let's see if the players pick that up now, because as Garland suggested, like, this team ain't hiding anymore. You know, the Canucks are back. The league knows it. So let's see what Patrick Allvin can do this offseason, and let's see what the Canucks can do as players to get themselves better to make another run next year. All right. We will be back. We'll continue to do these throughout the offseason, and there's going to be so much stuff to get into. Why wouldn't we? Of course, draft is going to be coming up, and Stanley Cup is going to be handed out. Just we on the show too, we don't really talk outside of Canucks, but now that the Canucks are out, Aaron, maybe we get a chance to sort of, spread our wings a little bit and dig into some of the stuff that's happened in the conference finals, that is. What'd you think of Edmonton's first win?
Well, I turned it off after the first overtime because I'm like, I'm not really invested in this, but 2 overtime.
That's the Canuck fan in you right there. You're like,
oh,
damn, I don't want to see this anymore.
It was a lovely evening last night. It's going to rain all weekend, so I was outside in the park, man.
Yeah, there you go. Fair enough. I thought it was a great game. I like both those teams. I think Dallas and Edmonton are both just, to me, both would be worthy if they were able to hoist the cup. But I think it's really cool that it's Connor McDavid that scores the game winner.
Yeah,
because
what a stop by Ottinger in the first overtime against McDavid too.
Well, how about the Stars putting it off the post as well?
Oh, like what, 3 times?
Yeah,
post. Yeah,
on that 4-minuter. I love McDavid when they asked him post game. He's like, I hated every second of it. Yep. Just sitting there sweating it out too. And Canuck fans might have a gripe with that a little bit, but let's let that just go at this point. All right, just like this podcast. We're all done here. For producer Aaron, I'm Andrew Wadden. Thanks for listening, everyone.